How does Tessarion die? House of the Dragon Explained. Warning, major book spoiler warning. Before we begin, this video contains major spoilers from George R.R. Martin's Fire and Blood, which may reveal future events in HBO's House of the Dragon. We'll explain Tessarion's final battle, how the Blue Queen dies, and whether the TV series could change her fate. With that said, let's get started. When fans talk about the most beautiful dragons in House of the Dragon, one name always stands out: Tessarion. Known as the Blue Queen, her shimmering cobalt blue scales, bronze highlights, and graceful appearance make her one of the most stunning dragons ever described in George R.R. Martin's world. But beneath that beauty was a fearsome warrior. Ridden by Prince Daeron Targaryen, Tessarion becomes one of the Green's greatest weapons during the Dance of the Dragons. Unfortunately, like almost every dragon caught in the Civil War, her story doesn't end in glory. It ends in tragedy. So, how does Tessarion die? Who actually kills the Blue Queen? And why is her death one of the saddest moments in Fire and Blood? Let's break it all down. Who is Tessarion? Before discussing her death, let's understand why Tessarion was so important. Tessarion is the dragon of Prince Daeron Targaryen, the youngest son of King Viserys I and Queen Alicent Hightower. Although she isn't as enormous as Vhagar or as old as Vermithor, Tessarion is still a formidable dragon. She's fast, agile, intelligent, and capable of unleashing devastating blue dragon fire upon her enemies. Because of her striking appearance, she's affectionately known as the Blue Queen. Among Green supporters, she quickly becomes a symbol of hope as the war grows increasingly desperate. Tessarion and Daeron become heroes of the Greens. As the Dance of the Dragon spreads across Westeros, Daeron and Tessarion finally enter the war. Unlike some members of his family, Daeron earns a reputation as a capable commander. He fights bravely, wins victories, and becomes one of the Green's most respected princes. Together, Daeron and Tessarion help secure several important victories across the Reach. Their greatest triumph comes during the First Battle of Tumbleton. The First Battle of Tumbleton. The First Battle of Tumbleton becomes one of the largest battles of the dance. The Greens face Rhaenyra's forces in a brutal struggle. Tessarion fights alongside powerful dragons like Vermithor and Silverwing. The arrival of these dragons completely changes the battle. Fire rains from the sky. Entire armies are destroyed. The Blacks suffer a devastating defeat. For the Greens, it feels like a turning point. Daeron is celebrated as a hero. Tessarion proves herself as one of the war's deadliest dragons. But victory comes at a terrible cost. Because Tumbleton isn't finished with dragons yet. The Second Battle of Tumbleton. Everything changes during the Second Battle of Tumbleton. Unlike the first battle, this one becomes absolute chaos. Alliances collapse. Dragon fights erupt across the battlefield. Several of the greatest dragons in Westeros clash in one of the bloodiest aerial battles ever recorded. Tessarion becomes caught in an incredible three-way fight. Her opponents include Sea Smoke, ridden by Adam Valerion, and Vermithor, the mighty Bronze Fury. The skies above Tumbleton become an inferno. Dragonfire fills the air. Massive beasts crash into one another. Entire sections of the battlefield are destroyed beneath them. It's one of the most spectacular dragon battles George R.R. Martin ever wrote. The battle leaves every dragon broken. No dragon escapes the fight unharmed. Sea Smoke suffers catastrophic injuries. Vermithor is eventually brought down. And Tessarion, although she survives the battle, is left horribly wounded. Her wings are torn. Her body is burned. She can barely move. Most importantly, she can no longer fly. The once majestic Blue Queen, who had ruled the skies only moments earlier, now lies helpless on the ground. How does Tessarion die? This is where her story becomes truly heartbreaking. Unlike dragons such as Vhagar, who died during battle, Tessarion doesn't die immediately. She lingers, badly injured, unable to recover. Still alive, but clearly dying. According to Fire and Blood, those nearby realize there's no saving her. Her wounds are simply too severe. Eventually, someone ends her suffering with a crossbow bolt. George R.R. Martin intentionally leaves one mystery unsolved. We never learn with certainty who fired the fatal shot. Some accounts suggest one person, other accounts suggest another. The historical records disagree. That's fitting for Fire and Blood, a book presented as conflicting historical testimony rather than absolute fact. What everyone agrees on is why it happened. It wasn't revenge, it wasn't victory, it was mercy. The Blue Queen had suffered too greatly to survive. Why her death is so tragic? Tessarion's death feels different from many other dragons. She isn't defeated in one dramatic final duel. She isn't instantly killed by another dragon. Instead, she slowly dies from wounds received in battle. Watching one of the most beautiful dragons in Westeros suffer after surviving the fighting makes her fate especially emotional. Her death reminds readers of one painful truth. The Dance of the Dragons doesn't spare heroes, or legends, or even dragons themselves. Everyone loses something. Even victory comes with unbearable sacrifice. What does Tessarion's death symbolize? Throughout Fire and Blood, dragons represent the greatness of House Targaryen, their power, their legacy, their dominance. But during the dance, those same dragons become victims, forced into battles created by human ambition. Tessarion never chooses this war, neither do most dragons. They're loyal to their riders, nothing more. The Blue Queen's tragic ending symbolizes how the conflict destroys not only families, but the very creatures that made House Targaryen extraordinary. Every dragon lost pushes the dynasty closer to its eventual decline. Will House of the Dragon change Tessarion's death? That's one of the biggest questions fans are asking. The HBO series has already changed several important events from Fire and Blood. Characters have been combined, relationships altered, timelines adjusted. Even dragon storylines have evolved. Because of that, Tessarion's final moments may not happen exactly as they do in the book. However, the overall outcome will likely remain the same. The Blue Queen's death is too important to the larger story. The exact battle choreography, the identity of the person who delivers the final mercy, or the emotional presentation may change, but her tragic fate will almost certainly remain one of the most emotional dragon moments in the series. What happens after Tessarion dies? With Tessarion gone, the Greens lose one of their last major dragons. The balance of power shifts once again. Even more importantly, another piece of House Targaryen's legacy disappears forever. By this stage of the dance, the dragons are dying faster than they can be replaced. The war that began as a fight for the Iron Throne slowly becomes the war that destroys the dragons themselves. And Tessarion becomes one of its greatest victims. Final thoughts. So, how does Tessarion die? Not in a glorious final victory, but after surviving one of the bloodiest dragon battles in Targaryen history. Gravely wounded during the Second Battle of Tumbleton, the Blue Queen is left unable to fly or recover. To spare her from further suffering, she is ultimately killed with a crossbow bolt, an act remembered not as cruelty, but as mercy. Her death perfectly captures the tragedy of the Dance of the Dragons. Because in this war, even the most magnificent dragons cannot escape the destruction caused by human ambition. The Blue Queen may have been one of the most beautiful dragons Westeros ever knew, but like so many others, she became another casualty of a family determined to destroy itself. So, what do you think? Will House of the Dragon faithfully adapt to Tessarion's heartbreaking death? Or could HBO give the Blue Queen a different ending? Let me know your theories in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more House of the Dragon explained videos, dragon lore, Fire and Blood breakdowns, and hidden details.